green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! It is a Birds 365 morning. Thank you very much for streaming on in with us being the Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. You are Birds 365 guys with one, not 2 and 2, just 1 week until Eagles report officially to camp and the 2022 season gets underway. J-Mac, since last we checked out 22 hours ago, there is actual Eagle news. Don't always get that a week out from camp. Everybody is in just wait and see mode, but they actually made a roster move yesterday. Not earth-shattering, but a roster move just the same. They released one of the 86 cornerbacks they had on the roster. Craig James, who's been here for a good couple of years now, both on the regular roster and on the practice squad, was given his walking papers. I remember Craig James making a play here or there over the last 3 years. Nothing really to circle on your play sheet or to commit to memory, but he did make a couple of plays. My only question for you is, why yesterday? It just seems like a different type of time to be making this decision. If you thought Craig James wasn't good enough to play for you, they could have released him a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, 2 months ago. Why yesterday to say, Craig, thanks for the memories?
It's a good question. Maybe his agent, took a look at the roster and said, wow, there's 13 cornerbacks on a 90-man roster. You're the math guy, Jody, but that's, what is that? Close to 15% of the roster is cornerbacks. Craig's buried deep, and maybe he said, hey, look, could you do us a solid and released him a little bit early? Maybe he can catch on. But you're right. I mean, could have done that a month ago, could have done that 2 months ago. I mean, it's clearly, if I were to, go from 1 through 13, cornerback 1, Craig would have been CB 13, not from a talent standpoint, but from a realism of trying to make the roster standpoint, because he's a special teams guy. He's been injured a lot. Probably will be best known for making that play against Green Bay when the Eagles were really up against it, and he saved the game with the pass breakup. But, you want to look at the young guys, and they brought in 3 pretty high-profile undrafted rookies. Then they got Bradbury, and all of a sudden, there's just no path to the roster. So you might as well let them catch on somewhere else, and who knows, he might be back down the road. You know how these things work, and the Eagles know what they have in Craig James, and unfortunately wasn't able to stay healthy. I think that more than anything, once they moved on from him as a special teams player, which they kind of did last year, you knew his time was running short.
And you've got a optimistic outlook on it that they're trying to do him a favor. I don't know if the Eagles if that is in play here or not. I'm not saying that I know it's not, but I just see it as a numbers game. And here's the number that I have that I will question. and that's now 89. There are 90 men allowed on the roster at this time of year. Is there someone out there that they're targeting? Is there something in the offing that they needed to have a roster spot? You can do that in the moment. Yeah, you go pick up somebody, boom, you release the other guy. You put the two of them on the same exact release, or should I say on the same tweet, since NFL moves are now announced on Twitter as much as anywhere else these days. But do you think there's someone that just maybe the Eagles are looking at? He's sitting out there and they go, hey, if we don't sign him to a contract here soon, somebody else is going to do so. Could that be the case?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to bring in another guy. They have an open spot. They're going to bring somebody in. I think the people looking at, they're making room for Jesse Bates. I think they're insane. Maybe they're trying to pick up a punter. Who knows? To give Aaron Cepas some. They do have 90 players because they have Matt Leo, so he doesn't count. The International Pathway Program for the third year, so they get an extra guy, and they'll fill the spot before training camp. But yeah, I mean, those people saying, "Oh, the trade must be coming." No, it's just run of the mill, boring, back of the roster churn. Tight end we talked about a lot is another position. They have a bunch of them, but maybe you want more of a veteran type to feel a little bit more comfortable behind Dallas Goddard. You do have Richard Rodgers, but we know what this team feels about Richard Rodgers. Those would be the three positions I would look at punter. I would look at tight end. And what else did I say? I already forgot. But those are sort of it's back end roster churn. I don't think it's a signal of big things to come or
no idea.
First round pick going to Cincinnati. I don't think you have to worry about that.
It's just the fact that they did it 8 days out from camp that kind of grabbed my attention, because if nothing else, you open up camp, you let everybody get in there, you go through a couple drills and go, yeah, Craig James is number 13. That's Johnny
and maybe Craig said, you know what, I don't want to go there for a couple days. Come on, let's expedite this thing. So could have been a lot of reasons. And
how much of that really goes on, John, that a general manager, knowing full well, slap a percentage on it, percentage chance he makes the roster, less than 1%, that a general manager will, on a request from an agent, say, yeah, do I really want to play to the 1% here? No, it may generate some goodwill. Don't know who Craig James's agent even is, and if he's got other players around and about the league that maybe someday you're going to need a little bit of a compromise, and you look them in the eye and go, remember when I released Craig to do you guys that solid? How much does that really play into something like this?
I think it happens more than people think.
Okay.
I don't think it happens a ton. I think it happens in situations where you have, for instance, to use Craig as an example, a veteran player has been there. You're not going to do it with a rookie. A rookie's you're expected to be on the back of the depth chart and work your way up, and that's just the nature of it. An undrafted guy, Josh Jobe or a Josh Blackwell or a Mario Goodrich, I mean, they're expected to show up and fight even though the odds are against them. Here's a guy who's done a little bit for the organization, and he's been around for a while. He's well liked, and if you could do him a solid, that kind of stuff happens. Back when the Eagles brought in Tim Tebow, that was a favor, really. They weren't. Tim Tebow, in the greatest tradition in sports, as you know, Jody, that has now ended the final preseason game between the Eagles and Jets. Tim Tebow made the Philadelphia Eagles. He played great in that game. He didn't have a chance because they didn't want him. They did him a favor and said, we'll keep your name alive, and it happens all the time. It happens, but it's usually veteran players who are well liked, on the cusp. You'll do them a favor.
And Craig James is one of those guys. He has been around for a couple of years, so that may very well be the case. I just was a little surprised at the timing of it and thought there's got to be more here than meets the eye, but it may just be as simplistic as you're laying out. The Eagles trying to do a solid by a player who has been on the roster for a couple of years, and maybe his agent put an unofficial request in for his relief. All right, J-Mac, we talked about this yesterday. You brought it up. And I want to expound on it a little bit today, and that's attempted deception by the Philadelphia Eagles. You pointed out that they were the least motion team in the National Football League last year. Out of 32 teams, they put players in motion less than anyone else. And when Nick Sirianni was hired, we all believed it was, at least in part, because he was going to be new and creative and different and bring some things to Philadelphia that we've never seen before. Well, that did not manifest itself in motion on offensive plays called. They were pretty darn stagnant, as a matter of fact. Kudos to you for being able to spot this, go back through the research and the like. I didn't realize it last year. I remember watching games, I'm going, they don't use motion much, and shrug it off and move on thereafter. But when you make a point to the degree of 32nd out of 32 teams in the National Football League, that's something that grabs your attention. And you say, whoa, really? They didn't use it last year. Here's the question I have for you. Two questions, twofold, as a matter of fact. Number one is, why? There had to be some kind of when the head coach was the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis. They weren't 32nd in the league in motion. It might not have been a key aspect of the offense, but it wasn't dead last in the league. So why do you think it was that they were 32nd in offense? Give me some reasons behind it. And do you think that is something that they are going to realize and say, hey, we need to take slightly more advantage of it? We shouldn't be 32nd in anything in the National Football League. Why would we be 32nd? I know someone has to be, but doesn't necessarily have to be the team that you're following or rooting for. Do you think they will make a concerted effort to use more motion this year?
Yes, but not a lot. Yes, because people like me are making a big deal out of it.
It's a worthwhile big deal, Johnny Mac. Yeah. I say give yourself credit rather than second guess.
Well, I talked to a lot of people, and when because I remember Nick getting not a lot, but a little bit of grief after the Dallas game. So I went back and I looked, and sure enough, they didn't use motion once in that game. And he said, we're not going to motion just to motion, which makes sense to me, to be honest. I mean, I don't. Yeah, and then and I said yesterday on the show, you have the Sean McVay sort of thought process, which is the other end of the spectrum, that, try to fool the opposing defense, essentially, try to get their eyes moving in the wrong direction. And I know from talking to Jim Schwartz many times, that's really affects the defense. It's really hard, especially with young players, to be disciplined, even when you know what's going on. So then I went back to when the Eagles played the Rams and they got blitzed. I think it was 37-19 in the 2020 season. And, before the game, Jim was talking about it. Jim was talking about the pre-snap motion. Jim was talking about, you just got to do your job. You just got to, ignore it, essentially, and keep your eyes where they're supposed to be. And Rodney McLeod said the same thing. Veteran player, over 30, been around, seen it all, won a Super Bowl. And he said the same thing. And the game showed up and they couldn't do it. And they were all over the place and they're chasing ghosts. And after the game, Rodney said it. We knew what was coming. We just couldn't do it. Because it's tough to be disciplined. It's tough to communicate. It's tough to get all those 11 pieces on the same page. So I do think there's value in motion. I do think it's overrated to a certain degree, especially when it comes to the quarterback. A lot of people think motion is designed to give the quarterback information. It's usually not. Quarterbacks like Tom Brady, they're just going to read the middle linebacker for protection. They're going to read the free safety, and they're going to figure out what the coverage is. I mean, those guys know because they've done it. They've seen it. They've seen everything. You don't need to give them information. They know it. Listen to Tony Romo in the booth. Tony Romo will tell you what's coming because he knows what's coming from where the free safety is and what the coverage is going to be. Those types of quarterbacks don't need information pre-snap. So it's not about that, and I think a lot of people think it is. But it is about taking advantage of, certain unique talents. The Eagles happen to have one. And I mentioned that yesterday as well in Devontae Smith. We all talked about Devontae Smith's lack of size, and it proved to be overblown because he's a really good player, and he stayed healthy, and hopefully that continues. But you know what? He is 166 pounds, and if you do have a big corner, like AJ Brown's going to be able to get off press coverage. AJ Brown's going to be able to get off press coverage because he's 226 pounds. And he's stronger than everybody else out there. Somebody gets their hands on Devontae Smith. Now you can say, well, it's difficult, and it is difficult to get your hands on Devontae Smith. But if you do, you could stone him at the line of scrimmage if you're one of those big, rangy, powerful cornerbacks like Jalen Ramsey or Marcus Lattimore or those physical guys. They could get some work done. Well, how do you deal with that? How did Alabama deal with it? Well, you get him off the line of scrimmage. You put him in motion. If he's in motion, there's no way you're getting your hands on him. Why aren't the Eagles taking advantage of that? Like that, to me, that little piece and that little player, and that when I talk to scouts and I talk to coaches, that's what they kept saying. In the modern game, there are certain players you can utilize in motion that it's going to make their job easier. For the Eagles, Devontae Smith is number one for me because he's so good at it. But Quez Watkins is in the same boat as well. As not a bigger receiver who and probably is an even better example because he's a speed guy, right? He's not going to beat you running routes at this stage of his career. So some of those corners I mentioned, if they get their hands on Quez Watkins, well, it's it, man. You just blew up the play. The timing is gone. Even if he gets open, it's not going to be at the standpoint the quarterback is looking for it, and we saw that a number of times where you say Jalen's got to get the ball out or he didn't throw the ball on time. Well, maybe the receiver wasn't where he was supposed to be on time. Like there's so many, and Nick Sirianni talked about this after the Giants game. I remember we had this big conversation about the play where all the fans were taking the screenshots and Devontae's open and he missed them. And Nick went into this, and I give him credit. He went into this basically dissertation. He was like, man, those guys, and he was talking about Devontae and Quez at the time, they ran the wrong route. They were at the wrong depth. They weren't where they were supposed to be. There's all these different things. And the one thing, every coach will tell you as a receiver, you cannot fool the quarterback. And by that, they mean you have to be where you're supposed to be at all times for the quarterback, and that means depth. That means if it's supposed to be run at 6 yards, it's supposed to be run at 6 yards, not 7, not 5. That's the kind of attention to detail Nick Sirianni talks about, especially a receiver, because he's a former receiver. He gets into it. But there's all these different things that come to it. But the bottom line is, Jody, when you talk about motion, 32 is 32. Everybody's using it more than you. Now, you say Indianapolis used it, but they were always bottom 5. When Shane Steichen was with the Chargers, they were 28th or 29th. So there's nobody on this coaching staff who uses motion consistently. But you got to use it a little bit more, especially when you have a star player like Devontae Smith who can really, really take advantage of it. And so I think it's a catch-22. Is it as important as people make it out to be? Probably not. Is it important though? Can you utilize it better? Yes, definitely. That's what I would say.
I think your Quez Watkins point holds more water than your Devontae Smith. And I didn't watch every single snap of all 17 Eagle games on all 22 to find out exactly how much this played in. But if I'm an NFL defense, if I got Jalen Ramsey, all right, I feel confident Jalen Ramsey can do whatever he needs to do on any given play. And last year, of course, Devontae was Eagles' #1 wide receiver. This year, debatable with A.J. Brown here. So you're going to have Jalen Ramsey available to cover Devontae Smith. Well, it doesn't matter because Eagles don't play the Rams this year, but you get my point. You want to get your cornerback up. You want to challenge Devontae Smith. Okay, fine. You're right. If your guy gets perfect positioning against him, gets his hands on him, gets leverage against him, you can take Devontae out of his route. And that can be majorly disadvantageous to any play that you're calling. But if you miss, Devontae Smith can make you pay because he's that good at running routes. He's going to have a step on you. He's going to be able to execute. The receiver gets open enough. The quarterback's going to be able to get him the ball. Big play, a first down, if not further down the field than that. You take your chances when you do that with any wide receiver in the league. And there are some you would take more chances against than others. Devontae Smith is one that I would be careful. I don't care if he's 166 pounds. He's got the skills. He's got the moves. He's got the ability to, once he gets a half a step on you, really make you pay. And this year it's going to be even more so because you got A.J. Brown playing against him. So it's going to be a secondary corner that's going to try and take that advantage over him. As a reason why you're a secondary corner and not the best corner on your defense. You're not that good. And Devontae Smith is going to make you pay. So if we're talking about just one-on-one battles at the line of scrimmage, I'll take my chances with Devontae Smith against basically any cornerback in the league and say he's going to win the fight more often than he's going to lose it. So I don't think that getting Devontae Smith open is the #1 reason that the Eagles should run more motion. Quez is a good point because Quez doesn't have the capabilities of Devontae Smith. He's got pure speed, and the only way he's going to be able to make you pay is if you don't get the perfect leverage defensive play against him, he's going to have to beat you downfield. It's not going to be that he's going to break off some great route and get separation against you and be able to move the chains. So if they were to use more motion this year, I would think it would be more for a guy like Quez. And the other thing you think of when you think motion is you put your running back in motion. And the Eagles right now have 3 guys in their running back depth chart with Miles on top and Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell. And they really didn't use those guys in motion much. Do you think it's because that's the way that this offensive coaching staff coaches? You gave us some numbers about what it was like in both Indianapolis and San Diego, some stops that they were at prior to getting here. Do you think it was a running back thing that they looked at the guys that they have on the roster and just said, no, it doesn't give us enough of an advantage. Why would we do it if we don't think it actually gives us an advantage? How much of that decision-making process do you think last year was talent on the roster specific at the running back position?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was talent specific at both receiver and running back, but wherever I went, I was told, nah, that's not the issue. I take Nick at his word when he says we're not going to motion just to motion. In his mind, he doesn't think it's as valuable as Sean McVay. I use Andy Reid as well, but Andy doesn't talk about it as much. Andy uses a boatload of motion. And they also happen to be obviously 2 successful offensive coaches, to say the least. Maybe the 2 most successful, but they do have significant talent. And maybe it just comes down to the Eagles getting better players and things will look better. I expect them to be bottom 5 in motion again because the head coach doesn't believe in it. The offensive coordinator doesn't believe in it. But and getting back to Devontae, it's not about it's not about he can't beat press coverage. It's about, all right, you just watched him at Alabama. Watch how Alabama used him. If you can help a great player, if you can affect the defense, why not do it? What I mean, you spent a whole draft process evaluating a guy who won the Heisman Trophy at the preeminent college program in the country, and they used him in motion constantly. When you say, oh, he does that well, let's put that in. Or he does this well, let's try that. And it from that standpoint, it doesn't make any sense to me. Now, they didn't have the big X receiver that they could put on the line of scrimmage last year. So you're right, A.J. Brown's going to help because right now he's going to be off the line of scrimmage. So he's not going to need as much help. But and forget about that word because that's probably a bad word. It's not even about help. It's about he's going to have room to get off the line of scrimmage more. However, if you can do what the Rams did against the Eagles, what Rodney McLeod was talking about, and everybody knows what's coming, but you're testing the discipline and the communication of the defense, and you get them chasing ghosts, why not give it a try on occasion? You know, they might know what it's going to be, but it's easy to say, all right, I got this rookie corner. I got this second-year corner. This is what they're going to do if they motion Devontae Smith here. Don't worry about it. You're in zone coverage, but they go fishing because in their mind there's like, oh, there's Devontae Smith, and I'm taking a false step. It might be as simple as that, Jody. It might be one false step, and then somebody on the other side is open, and that's what the Rams do. And that's what Sean calls it. He calls it the illusion of complexity. It looks complex to the outside eye, but to the Rams, it's really, really stinking simple. Really simple. But all the moving, all the bells and whistles, all the eyewash, it creates doubt in the defense. That's what I thought. I got to be honest. That's what I thought we were getting when Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen got here. That type of young mentality, and everybody, for better or for worse, Jody, everybody in this league thinks Sean McVay's the guy. That's what I thought we were getting closer to. It turns out they were backing up from that even further. That was a surprise to me. Not necessarily a good surprise, a bad surprise, but it was a surprise. In other words, the narrative with Doug Peterson, he got stale. He wasn't creative. How many times did you hear that? And he didn't know this. Now, Doug learned under Andy Reid. Doug used a lot more motion, not as much as Andy, but a lot more than Nick. That surprised me. That I got to be honest. I wasn't expecting that. Now, it's all about execution. I always say, look, the Philly special, right? The most famous play in Eagles history. Not the most important, but probably the most famous. That's looked upon as very creative and very, because it was exciting. You don't see it all the time, and they executed. Now, you and I both know if Trey Burton, who isn't used to handling the football at that time, if he drops the football, if he just a little bit outside with the pass, and he was a former high school quarterback, but we're talking high school, a little bit off, it looks like the dumbest play in the history of mankind. The Patriots did the same thing. Their play worked,
right?
But the play was just a little bit off. Brady couldn't come down with it, and then it's forever. You got a million mimes if Tom Brady can't catch the football, right? That's the razor thin line of genius, and you're the dumbest guy in the history of the planet. But the point of the whole thing is it's always about execution. It's always about, do the players execute what's called? And if the Eagles executed some of those 97 bubble screens we saw in the first 7 weeks of the season, we wouldn't be talking about those 97 bubble screens like they were a disaster. They didn't execute them. So it's all perception. And that's what I kind of wrote about. It's like, if you keep going down this route and the players don't execute, the perception is going to be you're not very creative offensively. And that could be dangerous.
The thing that scares me is, and you did a good job of going back and tracking with the history of both the offensive coordinator and the head coach when they were in positions with other organizations, exactly what the percentage was of how much motion they used. I still have a fear that part of it is you have to have confidence in the ability of your quarterback to be able to get the small advantage. Sometimes it's no advantage whatsoever. Sometimes the defense stays disciplined and it ends up being zero advantage. But if there's an advantage there to be had and it's split second, your quarterback's got to be able to take that advantage. And I'm not sure that the Eagles had that kind of faith in Jalen Hurts. But now we're back talking about the quarterback again.
Well, real quick, Jody, because I know we got to get to our first break, but because you bring that up, the Eagles have so much respect, and I'm talking mainly about Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen. They have so much respect for Phillip Rivers. It's kind of frightening. I mean, they just love the guy, and rightfully, he's another veteran quarterback. They didn't use motion with him.
Yeah.
So that's where I went down. I went down the same route as you. That was my first thought. They're trying to make things simpler for Jalen Hurts, and everybody I talked to, I talked to a Hall of Fame coach, and I talked to a couple different scouts, and they said the same thing. It's not about getting information for the quarterback motion. That those guys, Phillip Rivers being the perfect example. I use Tom but for this coaching staff, they had Phillip Rivers. They didn't use it, and Phillip knows what's going on. So that kind of hit home with me. It's like, well, you could say you're trying, because that was my first thought. They're trying to protect Jalen Hurts. Were they trying to protect Phillip Rivers? No. They think Phillip knows more than they do. But I mean, and he probably does, to be honest, from an NFL quarterback standpoint. They just don't like motion.
Right. And here's, and I've never talked to Phillip Rivers and or Sirianni or Steichen about it, but I guarantee you there are quarterbacks that prefer not to have motion, that they are going to try and get the pre-snap information that they want, that they're going to use in their judgment with a stagnant defense. That just let me move up to the line of scrimmage and let me read off that. If we go to motion, perhaps we do move a defensive player, and then I'm not going to be able to get as good a read. So it comes down to comfort level of the quarterback as well, that there are some quarterbacks who probably don't want motion, that they want to be able to just stand behind the center, take that split second, look exactly where everybody is, and believe that the play that they're going to that they've called is going to work because of the positioning of the defense. That there might be some to that. I don't know if Phillip Rivers is that kind of guy, but that might have been the reason why they didn't use that much motion when they had Phillip Rivers as well in both San Diego and in Indianapolis. All right, J-Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. I will come back, John. I want to touch on an article I saw over the weekend in Bleacher Report, of all places. And I don't know about you, but I go to Bleacher Report more for my NBA writing than my football writing. But they've got a couple of decent football guys. And a guy made a interesting observation and or a ranking, a list. We're just coming to the end of list season. But he had a list of teams that are in a month, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months from now going to look back and go, yeah, we had a regrettable offseason, that they just haven't upgraded the roster, and they look to be no better a team than they finished up 2021, if not a worse team. Some interesting names on that list, and a couple of interesting, at least from my opinion, names that aren't on that list. I'll explain when we come back. I need your take on it. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Birds 365 guys.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
7 on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
You got your Maga Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, hanging with you here on Birds 365. Coming up next hour, our buddy Bo Wolf. Haven't talked to the Wolfman in a good couple of weeks. Bo from The Athletic is going to hop aboard, and we'll get some Eagle insight from Mr. Wolf. That'll be in hour number 2. I mentioned a report I read over the weekend from Bleacher Report, not usually my top NFL news or opinion website, but they got a couple of guys there can write, and Chris Knox is one of them. And I saw this article and it grabbed my attention. Teams that once the season gets underway, they're going to look back and say, you know, we had a regrettable offseason here in 2022, that they just didn't do enough to improve the team for varying reasons. And he put together a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different teams. No, excuse me, 5 different teams. And I want to see if I can add to that list if you agree with me. But the teams that he thought had the most forgettable offseason, excuse me, it is 6. The Bears, yeah. You know how big a Justin Fields fan I am, right?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that mentality.
N'Keal Harry this week, their big addition.
That's exciting for them. They've
sadly stolen away a massively underachieving first-round draft pick from the New England Patriots for a 7th.
And he
when
might
you
be
only have to pay a 7th-round pick to get a former first-round draft pick, somebody's got to go, what the F, right?
Yeah, and he might be their best receiver on paper. Now, Mooney's pretty good, but Yeah, they're excited that somebody with talent has entered the building. Yeah, but I'm with you. They have been underwhelming, to say the least.
And I get it. They had a bad season last year, and they wanted to make a change. The general manager could have been fired years earlier. The head coach was finally fired, and they went in a new direction with both their front office and their coach. Shouldn't the number one priority have been exactly was like, oh, I don't know, here in Philadelphia, let's see if we can get a big piece or two to upgrade our young quarterback that hasn't been able to blossom yet in the National Football League. The Eagles go out and get A.J. Brown. The Bears go out and get N'Keal Harry. Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there. So, yes, I have zero issues, and it's going to bum me out because I'm as big a Field fan as I am that I just don't think.
Maybe he's available next season, if you know what I mean.
I would look into it. I still love the talent. The team that they acquired N'Keal Harry from, the Patriots. You know, you think about it, John. They had that uber aggressive offseason last year where they spent a whole bunch of money on tight ends, not one but two, and they hadn't done that in a long time. Been an aggressive player in free agency. They did it. They made the playoffs. They did get in after a season out, the first non-Brady season in New England, but then they got bounced in the first round. I don't know that the Patriots did have a great offseason. Would you call the Patriots offseason regrettable?
Yes, I would on paper. I tend to give the Patriots the benefit of the doubt. I think for obvious reasons. I think they deserve it. I think part of the narrative with the Patriots is Cole Strange in the first round because nobody thought he would be a first round pick. So that's used people, but if he turns out to be a good player, who cares? And then it goes back. I think it's about, I was pleasantly surprised how well Mac Jones played as a rookie. Does he turn into a legitimate top half starting quarterback in this league? I think if that's the case, I think all of a sudden New England looks better really quickly, and that will dissipate. But on paper, it doesn't look great. I do tend to give the Patriots more rope than everybody else, which I freely admit, but I think they deserve it. So I always put that little caveat in.
Right, because Belichick's Belichick. He's achieved that benefit of the doubt. If you don't give it to him, you're not giving him the credit that he is so richly deserved over his entire coaching career. All right, so neither one of us have a problem with the Patriots. Maybe the easiest one of them all, the Seahawks. You move away from Russell Wilson, that's one thing. And he wanted out, and it was time to go in another direction. And I completely understood it. I thought the Eagles had a legit chance to get him. He didn't want to come east. All right, fine. All those things add up. But their staunch stance of, yes, Drew Lock is the answer, is the one that just has me shaking my head. Has all offseason, continue to do so as we get here to camp. Thought they'd jump in and maybe be the team that landed Baker Mayfield. I don't think they're getting Jimmy Garoppolo, and people still seem to think Garoppolo's going to get traded. Oh, we'll get to him and his team next. They're going to war with Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Man, that's the only team that isn't on the Eagles' schedule and go, yeah, Eagles have a nice, easy schedule. Unfortunately, they don't have Seattle. That would have been a team that I would love to face anywhere. Their house, 12th man, whatever else. I think they're going to be terrible this year, and they had a really bad offseason. So I agree with them on this list. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, look, nobody wants to admit the T word in the NFL. And I don't think there's overt Sixer level tanking in the NFL. But, when you go into a year with Drew Lock as the starter, it at least somewhat indicates that, you're not trying your best to win games. You're going into a season where I think you've acknowledged this is a rebuild, and maybe winning football games is not the paramount goal of the organization, which you never want to admit in public. But don't listen to what teams say. Watch what they do. And you don't go into a season with Drew Lock if you think, hey, we got a chance to be a contender. It's not the way you do it. It tells you all you need to know. I mean, now, see, the bigger question to me with teams like Seattle, Jody, is what do you go get a Mayfield? Can't do it now, but before, can you go get a Garoppolo and you're a little bit better, but you probably still stink because you're not ready in other aspects as well. So this is the debate people have with tanking all the time. What's better? Try to win games or don't care and try to get that top 5 pick?
I'm sorry. Any season in the National Football League that you come in with Drew Lock as your quarterback, it's a bad decision. If you got a bad team, then yes, Baker Mayfield is not going to move the needle. And if you're trying to figure out, well, we could actually win 4 games, we need to only win 3 games. Shame on you. If you're really splitting those hairs that we need to lose that 1 extra game to make sure we're drafting in the top 3 rather than the top 6, that gets general managers fired. That gets coaches fired. And it should on both fronts. If that's the way Seattle looked at it this offseason, shame on them. They did have a very forgettable offseason, regrettable offseason. And they put the Seahawks, Chris Knox put the Seahawks on this list as well. The 49ers on this list as well. And they're not going to get Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't see Garoppolo being traded to a divisional opponent. What happens if you're the 49ers? You had a lead in the 4th quarter of potentially going to the Super Bowl last year, and you get beat this year by Jimmy Garoppolo in a division game against a bad team like the Seahawks? That is not going to play well, John Lynch. So I don't think there's any chance that they trade Garoppolo to the Seahawks. They list the 49ers as a regrettable offseason. You buy that?
Well, they didn't do much as far as I recall. They didn't have a pick until late in the 2nd round in the draft. I can't even think of a free agent they got. So they didn't do much, but it's a really talented team to begin with.
They didn't lose much either. Is that
well, they lost Jaquiski Tart.
Yeah, I was going to say that's going to tear the 49er defense apart.
No, it's a really talented team. They're starting at a good position. So I think their hope is Trey Lance is a starting quarterback and they're better at quarterback. And if they're better at quarterback, they're going to be really good because they're already really good with an average quarterback. And that's being kind, if you want to call them average, in my mind, at least. And so did they have a great offseason? No, because they didn't do much. Great off seasons are Philadelphia off seasons where you add players and draft picks, and that's a good off season. They've been kind of stagnant because they had to be from a draft perspective. They didn't have anything. I think Drake Jackson was their first pick. They got a corner. I can't remember the corner they got, but that's about it. They didn't do much. So, I mean, yeah, you can't say it's a great offseason, so I have no problem. But they're a really good team. They didn't have to do much.
Right.
They just gotta fix the quarterback position.
I have trouble fixing the word regrettable. Maybe not awe-inspiring, but I don't think it was regrettable. And, oh, by the way, I continue to say this, and if I'm proven wrong before the first of the year, please remind me, Johnny Mac, and I'll eat some crow. Jimmy Garoppolo is still going to be there when the season starts. They've had all these conversations all off season. Even your favorite coach, Mr. Shanahan, kind of threw Garoppolo under the bus and said, yeah, I would have expected Jimmy to be traded by now while he's still on your team. Not the smartest move, coach. I think when the season starts, he's still going to be there. Now, I'm not ready to say he's going to be their starting quarterback because if Trey Lance comes into camp and he wows, they're going to say, Jimmy, here's a clipboard for you. And he's going to be their backup quarterback. But I think both of those two guys are going to be there when their season starts. I would not call their offseason regrettable. The two others that they listed include the Steelers, who made their move at quarterback. Nothing they could do about it. Ben Roethlisberger decided to retire, needed to retire. They weren't going to get a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson either. So they were the lone team that decided we'll take the first round draft pick choice and go with Kenny Pickett, keeping the homeboy home. They didn't do anything else. And with Ben Roethlisberger coming off their cap, making a big chunk of change this past year, they should add more cap flexibility. We talk all the time about when you're going with a young quarterback, an inexpensive quarterback like the Philadelphia Eagles in 2022, you can do some other things to upgrade your rosters in other positions, like bring in an A.J. Brown. We keep comparing it back here to Philadelphia because we know Philadelphia inside out. Pittsburgh didn't really do that. They decreased the amount they're paying their quarterback. They brought in Mitch Trubisky on an inexpensive deal to be the veteran battling for the job guy against their first-round quarterback pick. Yeah, I kind of agree with this one, that it's certainly a forgettable, if not regrettable, offseason for the Steelers. How would you describe it to this point?
Well, the Steelers are another one. I wouldn't say to New England's level, but I tend to give them the benefit of the doubt as well because they've made so many smart decisions over the years. They're not a team that's going to spend a lot of money in free agency, even with a change in the quarterback part of it. But, I think it's well known what I think about Mitchell Trubisky. I think anybody trying to buy into that stock is insane. So it's about
you got to give him this one. Mitch Trubisky better than Drew Lock. You're not even ready to go there.
Yeah. I mean, what it's like? Do I have to pick?
Yes, you must pick. You got to pick one over the other.
Well, if I got to pick one over the other, I'm going to pick Kenny Pickett. You better get Kenny Pickett quickly ready to be as good as you can be as quickly as possible. Boy, Drew Lock versus, if you're going to force me to pick one, I'm going to go Drew Lock. That's how
you really
much
do hate Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, I don't see anything of value there. Anything.
I'm not a big Mitch Trubisky fan, but I'm going to take him over Drew Lock.
And
Sorry about that.
I think he's so limited as far as reading the field. I just saw so much of him in Chicago where they would try to cut off the field. And I know from watching Brad Childress over the years with Tavares Jackson. Remember Tavares Jackson?
Sure.
He would be by his third or fourth year. They were still rolling them out to cut the field in half to do the simple high-low reads. And I said, man, all right, if you're still doing that, this is a disaster. And the same thing I saw with Mitchell Trubisky. So I have I don't understand anybody buying into Mitchell Trubisky. So I do rip the Steelers for that. They signed a couple their offensive line was really bad last year, and they signed a couple underrated offensive linemen. So they do tend to make smart moves, but they're never going to spend a ton of money. They're going to spend their money on their, TJ Watts and Ben Roethlisbergers and their homegrown guys, more than go out and they have more of a Green Bay mentality when it comes to free agency, a Ted Thompson Green Bay mentality.
Yeah, but I didn't necessarily love the signings that they did have, even if they weren't big buck signings. And the last one on the regrettable offseason list from Chris Knox of Bleacher Report is the Commanders. And that can be taken a bunch of different ways.
I'm surprised the Cowboys weren't on there too, by the way.
That's what I was going to get to. The last of the six is the Commanders. Maybe Carson Wentz is an upgrade from what they had at quarterback last year, but I don't know that for a fact. I'd say it's a good possibility, but it's not a given that, oh my God, they put Carson Wentz in, they're going to be that much better at quarterback. I've always liked Taylor Heineke. I know his limitations are he's never going to be a guy who's going to throw for 4,000 yards, 4,000 plus if he had stayed there starting quarterback. But he also doesn't screw a game up for you, and he's got some nerve, and he'll pull it down, make a play with his legs every once in a while.
Have some nerve. I like his moxie.
Yes,
that's
you and I
a
both.
word. Yeah, I like his moxie, Taylor Heineke.
So I don't know how much of an upgrade it is at cornerback, and there's everything else about the organization, starting from the top down with Daniel Snyder and everything else. So they deemed that a regrettable offseason. Some people don't believe that. There are people that say that the Commanders can actually be competitive with the Eagles and the Cowboys. I don't see it. I think there is a strict line in the middle of this division. There's the Cowboys and Eagles above it and the Giants and the Commanders below it. And I don't think there's much of a chance of someone jumping from the bottom up to the top or someone from the top dropping down to the bottom. I just don't see it. I do believe there is a really strong line between this division. It's two teams up top and two teams on the bottom, which is going to get me to my next point. You kind of went there. I want to follow up on it when we come back here. There's two teams missing from this list. I don't necessarily buy the 49ers. I'm not as strong on the Steelers. Bears, yes. Patriots, yes. Seahawks, yes. And Commanders, yes. There's two teams that I would put on this list ahead of the Steelers and certainly ahead of the 49ers. We'll come back and carry that conversation on. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
You got your Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, here on Birds 365. Bo Wolf from The Athletic scheduled to join us coming up about 20 minutes from now. John, before we went to break, I was recapping this article I saw on Bleacher Report. Chris Knox wrote about the teams with the most regrettable 2022 off seasons included the Bears, the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Commanders, the Steelers, and the 49ers, which I have some trouble with both of those two teams because they didn't necessarily progress, but I don't think they backed up. And therefore, I don't know that I would call them regrettable. And two teams jumped out at me that I thought were significantly more regrettable than those two. Oh, and it's really good news for the Eagle fans because the Commanders are already one of the 6 teams. And I did double check on Twitter. Have you seen this on Twitter over the weekend? The newest Twitter account created to find Dan Snyder's yacht. Dan Snyder's yacht tracker on Twitter that you can get update movement of Dan Snyder's yacht somewhere in the south of France or in outside of Italy or wherever he's got it somewhere there over in Europe as he tries to run out the clock on an appearance in front of Congress. Don't know if he has reacted to the Commanders being on this list. He should. But the Washington Commanders already on the list. Why aren't the Dallas Cowboys on the list? I think the Cowboys have had a regrettable offseason. I think they got hurt by being in a cap position where they did give up Amari Cooper, and for my money, didn't come close to replacing him. You want to say, oh, well, CeeDee Lamb just steps up at number 1. Oh, okay. So who's replacing CeeDee Lamb? There was just a domino effect that the wide receivers, and they went backwards at that position.
Yeah, they also lost Cedric Wilson, so they lost depth as well at the receiver position. I thought I was trying to think of teams you may have thought Dallas is the first one I came up with because, the Randy Gregory situation. Randy Gregory, because for years we all know what he's been and the issues he's had in his personal life and suspended more often than not. But man, he was turning into one hell of a player and he was out on the field a lot last year. And they lost him as well on the defensive side of the ball. The kid they drafted in the first round, Toddler Smith, the offensive tackle. Look, for years they've had this great offensive line. They're starting to lose it. They lost Lyle Collins. They lost one of their guards to the Dolphins. Forget his name, Connor Williams, I think. They're trying to rebuild it, which I get, but he seems like a project, and to me, so it's going to take a little bit of a while. So yeah, the Cowboys are one of those teams that they still have a lot of good players in that extreme. They have a lot of good players at the top of their roster, but they don't have much depth. And I definitely think they've come back to the pack a little bit from a talent perspective. And then the two other teams I thought of were Arizona for a lot of reasons. Kyler Murray issues, but also, Hopkins is suspended. I don't think they've done much. And then Tennessee, which is partially Eagles related as well, because they lost A.J. Brown. They're trying to replace him with Treylon Burks. Good luck with that. Maybe that'll work 3-4 years from now. It's not going to work this year. And they were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. And now they're an afterthought. Nobody even talks about Tennessee. Now it's a deep conference. But man, nobody talks about them, Jody. So they've certainly taken a step back.
Here's what Tennessee's got going for them. They get to play Jacksonville twice again this year, and they get to play Houston twice again this year. They're still in a bottom-feeding division. So although I've never been a fan of the quarterback, they're still in a pretty strong position because that's just a very weak division. No, I'll give you the other team. You and I have talked about it plenty. How much effort are the New York Giants putting into winning this year, John McMullen?
Well, yeah. They're in that Seattle mode. They're in this, to me.
Well, anytime you go into tank mode, I'm sorry, For yours truly, that makes it a regrettable offseason.
Well,
if I'm a fan of that team and they're telling me ahead of time, try and win. Oh, no. That's not us this year. That's a regrettable offseason.
Well, I can't put them in the I can have criticism of their offseason, but I can't put them into the bottom grouping that we're talking about for the simple reason that they had 2 top 10 picks and they got 2 really talented players. So,
no growing pains for those.
No, they're going to have growing pains, but they're
startup costs. There's not going to be startup costs.
No,
for
there
those
are,
rookies?
but to me, when we're talking about off seasons, like, you didn't add anything in certain places. We just talked about some of those places. They got 2, it might not be for 2 or 3 years because there are going to be startup costs, but you got 2 really, really, really talented players. And if you don't screw it up or they don't screw it up, they got a chance to be haunting Eagles fans for years. And that's why, just because of the pure talent they were able to add, because they've been so bad over the years. If you keep picking the top 5 or top 10 year after year after year after year, you're going to wake up one day and say, wow, we got some really good players. I think the Giants added some talent, so I can't put them in the category of some of those teams we talked about, like San Francisco, who didn't do anything, or Seattle, or, guys at San Francisco, for instance, Drake Jackson, I think 61st pick. All right, they got Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, and a lot of people will tell you those were the 2 most talented players in this draft, just from a pure trait standpoint. So that's why I don't include the Giants. But yeah, they stink. I mean, they stink in the short term.
And see, that's how I start my thought process when I'm evaluating an individual offseason. You certainly have to look at the big picture. How big an effect is this going to have on the team over the next? I think the furthest you can go out is 5 years, but then it comes back to 4 years and 3 years and 2 years and this next upcoming year. The further away from present day you move, the less emphasis I put on what you did for the team. That if you're talking about, hey, the moves we made this year, 5 years down the road, man, we're going to reap the benefits from that. That doesn't count as much as 4 years down the road. And that doesn't count as much as 3 years down the road, which doesn't count as much as 2 years down the road. And sure as hell doesn't count as much as what's coming up this next season. So if that's the Giants' claim to fame this offseason, hey, we took 2 kids high in the first round that when they get up to speed, when they get those startup costs paid, man, are we going to be good. That doesn't help me this year. That doesn't help me in 2022. The Giants were bad last year, and I expect the Giants to be as bad, if not worse, this season.
Well, I think the best way to build a team, and remember, this is a new regime, and you can't give the New York Giants enough grief since they moved on from Tom Coughlin and Jerry Reese. Whatever you say, I'll times it by 10. They've been a disaster of an organization. So they rebooted again. I don't know if Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are going to be any good. I don't know. But I do know the way to build teams in this league is through the draft, not free agency. Free agency is about supplementing when you get a team. If they were to go out and spend do flashy things on free agency, I would say, what the hell are the Giants doing? They're not ready to win. The fact that they got Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, man, if those 2 players were in Philadelphia, Jody, you would be so excited. And so would all the Eagles fans. I mean, those are high freaking level talents. I can't look at adding people like that and just dismiss it. Yeah, they're at the start. They've been a disaster for years. And maybe it turns out to be nothing, because maybe Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are just the next version of Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur or Ben McAdoo or every other Joe Judge, every other disaster of a coach they brought in there, and they screw it up again. But I mean, I don't know. Those two, if you were to ask me who are the most talented players were in this draft, they would have been high on the list, both of them.
Here's the reason why I apparently am more down on the Giants than you are. We talk about it plenty here on Birds 365. Tune into WIP. Check out all you guys' articles during the offseason for the upcoming 2022 season. There are questions about Jalen Hurts. It's not a given about Jalen Hurts. Some people a little bit more of an optimistic spin, some a little bit more pessimistic. But, there are questions about Jalen Hurts. But there are people who point to the things that make you believe this could be a good season for the Eagles because their quarterback play is going to be improved with it from what it was last year. Giants quarterback play going to be improved?
No, and I know
Daniel Jones is on the precipice of taking a significant step forward.
No, I don't think he's going to be their quarterback next year. And that's why they're at the start of a rebuilding process. I know you. Believe me, I'm your partner on this show every day. I know what you think of Daniel Jones. I'm not necessarily all against him. But, man, again, I think your dismissal of Daniel Jones, which is not wrong, okay, you can't get better at quarterback right now because the quarterback draft was what it was, right? Kenny Pickett, that's it. That was the one first-round pick. And then there wasn't another quarterback to what, the third round? Did Willis go in the third round? It was a bad quarterback draft. So they couldn't upgrade a quarterback. So they upgraded where they could. They've had a bad offensive line for years. They potentially got the answer at left tackle. They potentially got a 15-sack guy. I mean, how could you look at those two specific talents and say, all right, it's at the start of this rebuilding process, but I don't think they got it right with those two guys. Now, maybe people had issues with Tebow because of his personality, whatever. But he's got talent. I don't know if he lives up to it, but he's got more talent than Trayvon Walker as a pass rusher, who was the number 1 overall pick. And Evan Neal, a lot of people thought he might be the number 1 overall pick and slipped a little bit. I don't know. I can't downgrade. When you add two pieces like that, I can't say it's a disaster of an off season. I could say the Giants have been those two things aren't mutually exclusive, Jody. I can say the Giants have been a disaster of an organization since the end of Tom Coughlin and Jerry Reese, which is true. But they got two really good prospects. I'm excited about Jordan Davis. If Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal were here, both of them, we'd be jacked up in Philadelphia.
Understood. But again, I'll quote my partner. There are startup costs with.
It's not going to.
And I think you're going to pay those startup costs this year. I love both players too. I talk both players up leading up to the draft in a big way, and the Giants happen to get both of them. So yes, for the future, the Giants have dividends to collect on. It's not going to be this year, and that's the most important thing for me, determining what kind of an offseason a team has.
And I don't even
how much
think
did
they
you
want it to
improve
be
for
this
this year, and then factor in the year after, but to a lesser degree, and then factor in year after, but to a lesser degree. And the further away you get from day one, then it just doesn't have as big an impact on how important your offseason was. And, oh, by the way, are you a fan of Wan'Dale Robinson, their second-round draft pick?
No, I wasn't.
Oh,
I didn't think that was a good pick.
How about Joshua Ezuda, the offensive lineman?
Yeah, but I don't care. If those two players turn into what they're supposed to do, that draft will always be regarded as a good draft. No matter what Wan'Dale Robinson does. And maybe I don't have much hope for Wan'Dale Robinson. But here's my only point is this, Jody. All right, you need a quarterback. The Eagles need a quarterback. This was not the year to go get a quarterback. So you can either pound the square peg of the round hole and pick Malik Willis in the top 10, or you could pick
top 10. You didn't have to pick him in the top 10. You could pick them in the third round.
Well, the point is he's not the answer. Whether you pick him in the top 10, the third round, the fourth round, the seventh round, undrafted, you can pick Carson Strong. I don't care. None of them are the answer. You can't get a quarterback this year. So if you're pounding that square peg in the round hole and you're missing on players like Thibodeau and Evan Neal because you're trying to pick Kenny Pickett, which would be the better example because he was the actual first round pick. You're making a mistake. So they couldn't get the quarterback. They know they need the quarterback. They're going to get the quarterback at some point. And by the way, it's probably good for them. Get the startup costs out of the way. Just throw them out there. Throw them in the deep end of the pool. Let them learn. Get a top 5 pick again. Get C.J. Stroud. Get Bryce Young. All of a sudden, you're cooking with gas. You got a quarterback, and you got Kayvon Thibodeau. Then you got Evan Neal. And then you're saying, oh, crap. Oh, gulp. Here come the New York Giants.
Yeah,
and Eagle fans hate me.
I would have played the offseason differently. I would have used a third-round pick to take a Malik Willis and or a Matt Corral and give them the year, get those startup costs out of the way. Now, if the guy goes in and just flat out stinks and you can see that he's overmatched, guess what? You're jumping back into that first round. You could achieve the same thing and get your 4-13 record on the record and see where the draft pick falls. And maybe you go back and you do take a higher ranked, higher rated offseason draft quarterback. But in the meantime, take a puncher's chance at someone else, not Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is a guaranteed, at least in my eyes, not to get the job done this year. And if you took a shot at a quarterback, there's a chance that one of these guys turn out to be a steal because they end up going in the fourth, third round and or later. Maybe Malik Willis is that. Maybe Matt Corral is that. The Giants are a team like Tennessee ends up with Malik Willis. They got an actual starting quarterback, and they still said, yeah, maybe we should take a quarterback here in the third round. The Giants have Daniel Jones, and they said, no, let's take an offensive line with our third round pick. No, I think
they need plenty of offensive line.
Bad offseason.
They need multiple offensive linemen, and they drafted one in the top 10. They drafted one in the third round. I mean, their offensive line has been a disaster for years. At least when you're in a position to get a quarterback, to get a more high-valued prospect, maybe you have a better offensive line. maybe instead of him getting destroyed from minute one, I don't know. I can't look, Eagle fans are going to give it. Dallas, yeah, I don't think they had a great offseason. Washington, yeah, I don't think they had a great offseason. The Giants, I think it's a positive from where they have been. I mean, they have been a freaking disaster. I think it's a clear, at least positive signs with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll.
Here's, again, we'll hit this one more time, then we'll punch up our buddy Bo Wolf from The Athletic. Joshua Ezua. He's a tackle. They spent their first round draft pick on a tackle 2 years ago. They spent their first round draft pick on a tackle this year, and in the third round this year, they took another tackle. How many tackles can you play, Johnny Mac?
No, he's gonna play guard. You're talking about is Zuadu?
Yes.
He's gonna play guard. They're gonna play him at guard. He's got that's their plan. Now we'll see. So right now you have Evan Neal's going to start at right tackle, Andrew Thomas at left tackle. I imagine they're going to try to start him because they're still, the interior of their line is still a disaster, but we'll see. I think they took another kid too in the 5th round or 6th round who's a guard. They carpet bombed the offensive line, and they should have, because it's been a disaster for years and years and years.
Yeah, I think the disaster was the Giants offseason, as a matter of fact. All right, we get Bo Wolf's take on how disastrous the other teams in the NFC East this year offseasons were and how they look in comparison to the Philadelphia Eagles. We are 1 week away from the start of camp. Looking forward to having Bo Wolf up talking Eagles football with us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
You've got John McMullen, Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365, and we have a key addition for the final half hour, 35 minutes here of the show. Our buddy Bo Wolf from The Athletic, good enough to hop aboard. You look like you're ready to go out and have a catch. Would
Always
that be accurate, bud?
You always got to be ready. Where's the glove, Bo?
You never know when you're going to get called on. Yeah, I go to practice. John knows this. I go to practice ready to step in as the number 3 quarterback.
Right. You never know, man. We should all be getting ready to be the punter. That one's still a bit questionable to me, Bo. Why there's no competition? But
I think Jimmy Kemsky would be most interested if one of us could step into the competition. Then he can track it.
The training camp obviously a week away. I want to get your thoughts because I go through these sort of little hiccups during the off season. I start to say to myself, well, Howie's had a really good off season, and this is a pretty talented roster. And then fans start to get a little bit nuts, and all of a sudden this is the greatest team that ever set foot. And I start saying, whoa, start slowing down on these expectations. Do you have these sort of hiccups in the off season where you go through these periods where you say this team's better than people think, and now I think people are just over the top with the expectations?
That's exactly right. I'm sort of like a contrarian by nature, I'm sure. And so, early on in the offseason, I'm thinking this team could be pretty good. They could win 10, 11 games. And now it's like everybody's getting excited. And I'm like, okay, let's slow down a little bit. It sort of just like sets my radar off. It sort of reminds me of the 2018 offseason coming off the Super Bowl, when it was like, wow, you know what? This on paper, this roster looks better than the Super Bowl roster.
Yeah.
And we're all thinking like, oh, they add Michael Bennett to this group. Like, Carson's going to be back, all this stuff. And obviously, like, it never goes according to plan. This is football. There are going to be injuries and other complications. And so I think that Howie Roseman did have a great offseason. Everything he did made a lot of sense. He improved the team in the short term without borrowing too much from the long term. He maintained flexibility. They're like deep everywhere, but that doesn't mean that it's going to go according to plan. And obviously, we expect that like Jalen Hurts is going to continue improving, but what if he doesn't? What if other things happen? So yes, I am very much like on alert that things are not going to go as well as maybe we expect them to right now.
All right, Bo, I want you to hop into the mindset of an individual Eagle player. And I'm not asking this question because I don't have faith that it's going to work out, but it's something that's never been dealt with before. And that's Dallas Goddard. He comes in as, for the first time, the number one tight end. Last year, you can make the argument he used Zach Ertz. Ertz certainly had the seniority, and we speculated that he could be dealt, and that's exactly what did happen. But it co-tight, even if you want to say co-number one tight ends last year, it was an unquestioned number one status for Goddard. That's the case this year. And not only is he number one, is number one and a massive drop-off to number two. So he's coming in with expectations, with the number one slot, and with the little niggling at the back of his brain that, I can't afford to get hurt here. Because if I do, we could be in a spot of trouble because my backup is not ready to step in and do Dallas Goddard-like things. Where do you think Dallas Goddard's head is at right now?
I think he's probably like figuring out what he's going to do with all his money. I mean, he got this new contract. He's moving out of the shared house with Avonte Maddox. He gets to live by himself. He's probably figuring out what it's like to be an adult. I mean, that's what he's doing. I don't know. I think he should have a big season, but they've also got a lot of other weapons. I don't think that. I mean, Dallas Goddard, you're right. There's a huge drop off to a number two tight end, but like if Dallas Goddard got hurt for an extended period of time, I would imagine they just wouldn't feature the tight end. They'd go more, 3-4 wide, and you've still got, AJ Brown, Quez Watkins, and Devontae Smith, and maybe Zach Pascal gets on the field more instead of going to Jack Stoll all of a sudden. So, I mean, obviously he's a very important player, but I think the offense, they have enough weapons. If you're just thinking of weapons as opposed to like position specific tight ends, I think they're pretty deep.
Who's going to be this year's NovaCare darling, Bo Wolf? Femi Moma back in the
I think
day.
this is an easy answer.
Yeah, Paul Turner. You got Henry Josie. Who was that kid from Rutgers? I couldn't think of his name. He was a 6'6" receiver. Everybody, you remember who I'm talking about? I can't think of his name. It's driving me crazy. But there's always, and it's usually a receiver. So I do think it's pretty obvious, especially what went on in
I do think it's easy. Yeah. I mean, think about, as you said, receiver. Everybody loves receivers.
Yeah.
Training camp is set up for guys to be effective in space.
Yeah.
Guys who are quick and can make a little juke. And I mean, let's be fair, short white guy, people are going to like that. So Britton Covey, the undrafted guy from Utah, I think is the overwhelming favorite to be the training camp darling here as we enter camp. And I think he does have a real chance to make the team as the return specialist. You watch his.
They need a punt returner.
They do. Yeah. And, Jalen Reagor is not super reliable back there. He's made a few plays as a punt returner in his career, but he's not super dependable. Covey could potentially be that. He was a very productive returner in college. I'm always wary of guys who are much older than their college competition, but for a return specialist, I would imagine that doesn't make quite as much of a difference. So I think he is definitely a player to watch.
Now he's got some competition though, Bo, because Devin Allen, the minute he runs by somebody, if he catches the football, it's gonna be quite the battle.
People were very upset about that disqualification.
Oh yeah. I find it ironic. I said, he's going from a sport where you're getting penalized for a false start and for technology and the naked eye. He's going to a $13 billion industry where they use index cards to to tell us first down. So it should be easier for him.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Do you think that it comes down to Covey or Rager? That one's going to be on the team and the other one isn't?
Or, I mean, I think it's possible that neither is on the team, for sure. I mean, I think Rager, like if anybody around the league offers anything for Jalen Rager, I think the Eagles would take it. I think it's unlikely they're going to straight cut him just because of the cap hit, and they might as well keep him around. And Howie Roseman has been slow to sort of admit defeat on bust picks in the past. But I think if anybody was willing to trade, their own disappointing early round pick for Rager, I think the Eagles would jump all over that. I mean, just think about is he going to play over Zach Pascal as a number 4 receiver or Quez Watkins? No. He hasn't earned that, and he hasn't, even if he's had flashes in camp in the past, it's never translated to the field. I don't really trust him as a return man. I just I don't see a path to relevance really for Rager with the Eagles anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of counterintuitive, and I think our buddy Chris Franklin was the first to bring it up, so I'll give Chris the tip of the Bo Wolves cap. But I think for an Eagles fan, it might be better if Zach Pascal's playing more than Quez Watkins, for the reason that probably indicates they're winning games in the fourth quarter rather than losing games. What's your thought? Because if they're in the 4-minute offense, they're going to try to run the football. They're going to want Zach Pascal on the field. So even though it's counterintuitive to me, more Zach Pascal might mean more success than if Quez Watkins is out there. Thoughts on that?
My initial thought is that I never want a receiver on the field just to block. I'm not.
I agree.
I'm not. That doesn't excite me. I'd rather spread the field and run the ball than have Zach Pascal on the field instead of Quez Watkins. But I think what Zach Pascal gives them is the ability to keep everybody fresh, right? You can have you can be three line up in 11 personnel, but by rotating those 4 guys, everybody stays a little bit fresh. Devontae Smith doesn't have to play 100% of the snaps. A.J. Brown doesn't have to play 100% of the snaps. And A.J. Brown has had, a history of nagging injuries. Yeah. So I think that is a real concern for them moving forward to try to keep him healthy. Maybe, Pascal plays and Quez Watkins plays. I think I think Quez Watkins could have a big year because think about what he brings as a home run hitter, and considering that opposing defenses are going to be so focused on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goddard, what resources can you really devote to the number 4 option on the opposing offense? And if Quez Watkins gets past you, I mean, he will get past you. He's very explosive. I think people underrate what he did last year. I mean, he had 600 plus yards receiving. I think nobody would expect that. And I don't know. I like Quez Watkins. I like him much more than Zach Pascal. I get the point that Chris is making. You're right. It would be better if they're in a 4-minute offense than playing from behind. But
it's not exciting.
Give me Quez Watkins on the field over Zach Pascal.
Yeah, it's definitely not exciting. But I would say from the Eagles' perspective, and this season in a lot of ways is going to be about the quarterback. So we got to talk about the quarterback. You're mentioning, on paper, I agree with you. You have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, you have Dallas Goddard. You got to obviously stop them first and foremost if you're an opposing defense. The Eagles have a quarterback that's capable of going to their 4th option. I mean, to me, it's all right. You're going to game plan for, as Nick would say, now it's going to be 11. Last year it was 6 and 88. Now it's going to be 11, 6, 88. How much is going to be there for Quez Watkins?
Well, just because he's the number 4 option in hierarchy doesn't mean he's the number 4 option in a specific play. I would give Sirianni enough credit to think that he'll be able to dial some stuff up for Quez Watkins. But you're right. I mean, he is not going to be the focus of the game plan. That's definitely true. But I think there will be some opportunities for him to have some big plays.
All right, Bo. We know that the Eagles made their big offseason move in acquiring A.J. Brown. You go out, you give up what you give up to get a player like that, and then, oh, by the way, extend him at $25 million per. Oh, yeah, he's going to get the football. We're debating on how much Quez is going to get it. We start with A.J. Brown's going to get it thrown his way plenty, and they should. So he's replacing Jalen Reagor. Qued's going to get what he's going to get. Devontae's going to get what he's going to get. Goddard's going to get plenty at tight end. But the swap out is A.J. Brown for Jalen Reagor. That equates to that many more passes being thrown this year. And if they're throwing that many more passes, that means that less runs by Jalen Reagor. And last year, his runs were pretty darn productive. A lot of first downs, 20-yard gains, moving the ball down the field. Is there a chance that the Eagles' offense this year, even being more productive in the pass game, will miss the runs that Jalen Hurts contributed to this year's team that we might not be putting enough of an emphasis on? Yeah, but we're not going to have Jalen running it as effectively as he did last year. Does that bother you at all?
I think the benefit of having Jalen Hurts being a credible running threat doesn't even necessarily need to mean that he's running the ball a lot. I think a lot of what he does, like his presence on the field, is opening things up for the running back, because defenses have to account for the possibility that Jalen Hurts is going to run the ball. I don't expect that they're going to lock him up and say don't run. It's part of what makes him an effective quarterback. It's like a huge part of what makes him good. And I think it's possible we may see them dial back the called runs a little bit. But what Jalen Hurts is good at, beyond just running the ball, is he's very good at protecting himself as a runner. And he knocked those fumbles way down last year after fumbling a lot as a rookie. I think he does a pretty good job usually of feeling out when it is that he should run. If it's not a pre-called run, like when he's escaping the pocket. And he does a good job of he'll run out of bounds or he'll get down. And so I think you're probably right that we might see it a little bit less than last year because they have more weapons in the passing game. But I think it would be short-sighted to take that away from his game when it is part of what makes him a good quarterback, if he is one.
Let's talk about the play calling, Bo, in the shift to Shane Steichen. You were there when Nick was talking about it and diagramming plays on the wall and Florida plays and insisting that it doesn't matter if it's Shane Steichen or Brian Johnson or Dom DeSandro or Julian Laurie or Bo Wolf. They're going to be run the same way no matter who's calling the plays. Is it a bigger deal? Is it not that big of a deal? What's your take on a young head coach who was brought in as a play caller, pretty much giving it up by midseason? I think it's a positive. I like CEO coaches. What's your thoughts on the shift in play calling?
I think it's a positive because it shows some self-reflection and some self-diagnosis that, for him to recognize that there was a little bit too much going on. I think it is true that we might maybe make a little bit too much of it because it is still, Sirianni's offense. The plays are his plays, and it's not that. It's not as important as designing the plays versus when to call them, right? And there is that open communication. But I also think he's downplaying it to a degree as well. He wants to make it seem like it's not a big deal. Obviously, it is a big deal. We asked him about this last summer. You're a first-time head coach, a first-time play caller. Are you really going to do all this stuff, in your first time? And I think the same thing happened with Doug Peterson in 2016, that he went through the same process and said he was going to do everything. And after 3 games in the preseason was yeah, this is too much. And so I think it shows growth that Sirianni is willing to look into things and see what he can do better. But I think it probably does Shane Steichen light your football love on fire as a mind? I'm not so sure that's the case, but I think I guess if we want to say that the results from last year speak for themselves, that was pretty good.
All right, Bo, I want to flip it over to the other side of the ball and talk some defense. 5 weeks into the season, they got a Dallas Cowboy team coming into town for week number 6. So you're working on a preview piece for that week. And
a long time in advance.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a little break.
Oh, no.
Get it in the can, Bo. Get it in the can.
You're that good that we have faith that you've already started to plot out what your articles are going to look like.
That is not true, I promise.
Come on, play along with me here, Wolf. The week leading up to the Cowboy game, which phrase is going to more fit the article you're going to do on the Eagles' third-round draft pick, their rookie linebacker?
Okay.
Working through the startup costs of a rookie or significant contributions at linebacker from a rookie. Which do you think is more likely a phrase that you would use to describe Nakobe Dean's first 5 weeks in the NFL?
How about Dean's list? A look, the every play that Nakobe has made for this improving Eagles defense. I don't know. I think he's going to be a factor early on. I do. I mean, the Kaiser White thing is I thought that was a very good signing. It made a lot of sense. He's exactly what you would expect that they needed for this defense. I mean, the defense last year was so soft over the middle of the field. That's really where they got killed, on third down after third down after third down. It wasn't even that those guys weren't asked to cover. It was that they were just giving up so much space. And I think that's because Gannon didn't trust those guys to cover. White's a former safety. That made sense. But this is to John's question earlier. My sort of spider sense has been tingling about it all along, because why was it that he was available for such a reasonable price for a Chargers defense that is going all in on their defense and is pushing their chips to the middle of the table? Why were they willing to let him go? We've seen in the past that free agent linebackers are not necessarily easy transitions, even if we expect them to be pretty solid. Now, White is a slight step above from the Eric Wilsons of the world, but I'm not so sure that he's going to step in and be a dominant factor right away. I think Nakobe Dean has a chance to be the guy who plays the most snaps of all three linebackers this season. I think if he's as good and as ready as the Eagles think he is, I think there's a chance he's very involved in this defense from week one on. And John, did you watch that the cooking challenge?
I did.
Chop thing that they. Yeah. What a dynamic personality, leader! What a leader! I'm in. I'm that. That told me two things. I'm in on Nakobe Dean, and I'm out on Carson Strong.
He's really smart too, Nakobe Dean.
Really smart,
I don't know if people realize that, but yeah. From the Eagles could have two very smart, very instinctive linebackers for the first time in a long time. But I do think there's a lot of, is it going to be Nakobe at middle linebacker? I think TJ Edwards is the most underrated player on this team. I think he's going to be the middle linebacker. I think if Nakobe gets out there quickly, I'm with you. It's going to be for Kaiser White, not
well. And what I also
Edwards.
think is interesting is with certain guys, you bring them along slowly. To your point about him being smart, you learn one position, you master that, then you move to another. That's how Jeff Stoutland handles things on the offensive line, generally speaking. My understanding is Nakobe Dean is learning all three spots, or really, mainly Mike and Will, but he is being thrown everything because they think that he can handle everything. And I think. What they can do, it's similar to what I was talking about at wide receiver, where you've got maybe four guys for three spots. I think they're going to be doing plenty of rotation between those three guys for those two spots in the defense. But I think Nakobe Dean's going to be on the field early.
All right, need you to look into your crystal ball again. I apologize in advance for making you look down the line. You like to take it step by step by step, as you just told us. But give us the next step. The Eagles released Craig James yesterday with 8 days to go before camp. They could have done it a week before, a month before, 2 months before. They could have waited a couple of days into camp and saw that he is or isn't in the best possible shape of his life. Why yesterday? What's the next shoe to fall?
I thought they had to clear a spot anyway. I thought they had one spot to clear. I could be wrong about that. But, I mean, they have
I get mixed up with Matt Leo. Is he still on the pathway? Is he still an exemption?
He is. He still has an exemption. But I thought that he counted against the 90, but not the 50, or not the practice squad. But I could be wrong about that. I like Craig James too. He was, solid, and he was a special teams captain in 2020. But they have so many corners. There was no chance that he was going to make this team. They want to see these young guys. I think they would say that they're doing him a favor. That means that he can latch on somewhere else as camp starts. He doesn't have to join midway through. I think it's just a numbers crunch. It was sort of there's not going to be.
There's 13 corners on the 90-man roster, and they do. I mean, they spent a lot of money on undrafted free agents, and they brought in 3 corners.
Plus the guys they brought in last year.
Yeah.
Like all those young guys, your Tay Gowans, your Kerry Vincents, your Mac McCains.
Yeah, and they talked about those guys up all off season. Then they get Bradbury. That's the thing. I mean, the Eagles give Fletcher Cox $14 million. Then they get Jordan Davis. They signed Kaiser White. Then they get Nakobe Dean. They get all these corners. And it kind of not necessarily were counting on it. And all of a sudden you got to readjust on the fly. Fletcher's an interesting player to me, Bo, because they rebooted the contract, but they gave him $14 million on top of it. So they got him on a year-to-year plan, but I can't get over that number. At $14 million, they expect him to be a big part of this defense, correct? Or am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, I'm sort of with you. That's the one move of the offseason that didn't really make sense to me. And not because you don't need a defensive tackle. I mean, obviously you don't know that you're going to end up with Jordan Davis when you re-sign Fletcher Cox, but that number is nuts. To your point, like there were other solid defensive tackles who were still on the market when they re-signed Fletcher Cox and who were signed for, $7-8 million. Like, a guy like William Golston or something like that, who might not be quite as good as Fletcher Cox, but is comparable based on Cox's production last year. And the other thing that's sort of odd to me is, I mean, they love Fletcher Cox in the building. Howie gets to hold him up as one of his best draft picks. He's a sort of a franchise legend, but like, is he the best, good soldier? We've seen him like publicly questioning defensive stuff before. He always scoffs when being asked about production dropping. And given what they have now, I'm not expecting he's going to play quite as much. I think they're going to try to rotate those 4 defensive tackles with Javon Hargrave, Milton Williams, and Jordan Davis to keep all those guys fresh. Like Milton Williams was really good last year. I think he needs to be on the field. And if that's at the expense of Fletcher Cox, I think that's fine. So we'll see how he handles that. They have a better sense of his locker room presence than I do, but that move to me, it's the one thing of the offseason that didn't make full sense.
All right, Bo Wolf, I'm going to give you one more shot here. I'm giving you more credit than you're willing to take, that you have an eye on the future, even though you say you don't write articles 6 weeks in advance.
All I'm focused on, Jody, is the most important thing as we enter training camp, defending my back-to-back roster prediction championship. That's the number one thing that everybody is paying attention to as we enter camp. Can he do the impossible?
And I'm going to be in second place. I'm going to be in second place, Bo.
Of course.
But the young guys don't seem to take it as seriously. I don't know. I can't get into it as much. But you're the champion. Maybe that's why I'm downplaying.
And Bo, don't kid yourself. It's rubbing salt in the wounds to McMullen. He is so pissed off that
I'm going to beat you.
Unbelievably so.
We
don't want to mention that while he's still
4 in a row. Could you imagine? I feel like they just send me to Canton if that happens.
Yeah.
All right, here's where I'm going to make you
practice squad. By the
earn
way,
your living above and beyond. See, that's why I thought you'd have the answer for why the hell Craig James was cut yesterday. That you'd already know what the roster move was going to include. But I'll go in a different direction here. I'll give you $1,000.
Thank you.
But you have to wait.
I'll see you later.
You can't put it in your wallet. You can't fund your kids' college fund down the road. No. You have to turn around and wager it. And here's your bet. You can either get even money odds on the Eagles winning the NFC East or someone else winning the NFC East. You taking 3 for 1. The upset special with either the Commanders or the Giants, or the defending champion, which we know the defending champion has not won the NFC East, 17 consecutive years? Or you get the Eagles. Where you putting $1,000 to win the NFC East this year?
I'm definitely putting it on the field. I mean, I think it's like you probably would say that it's a toss-up between the Eagles and Cowboys, and you're also giving me the unlikelihood, but the possibility of two other teams. I'm just, I'm trying to make some money here, Jody. I would definitely go with the field just because, I mean, a quarterback injury, any other injury that's to a significant player knocks things down for the Eagles. There are too many variables to go with the Eagles over the field, I think.
Yeah, but that injury to Jalen Hurts could just as easily come to Dak Prescott. And if that happens, the Cowboys are screwed too.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me who I think is going to win the division, I probably would say the Eagles, but I would definitely take the field over them.
That's a fair point. I think that's the smart bet, and he's a smart man, just like N'Kobe Dean at Bo_Wolf. Read him at theathletic.com/Philly. One Spurs with Friends, the finale with our buddy Sheil Kapadia. You got to say goodbye.
Thursday night.
Say goodbye.
Thursday night at 8:00, our YouTube channel. We will be live with the 5th annual Osprey Awards, a Sheilabration to say goodbye.
Sheilabration. I love it.
Sheil.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Sheilabration.
And Jody, I'll send you my Venmo so you can send me that $1,000.
I will. But I'll be covering it. So when the Eagles win the division, I'm going to expect that $1,000 back.
Deal.
Bo, good stuff. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much. Since you're well dressed for it, go outside and have a catch. He's warming up. I like it. Bo Wolf here with us on Birds 365. John McMullen, Jody McDonald. We're coming back. We got to put a bow on the show.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
got your Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald doing on Birds 365. We thank Paul Wolf for hopping on board. Always fun when Paul takes a couple minutes and joins us. All right, let me follow up on the question I asked him and put it to you, John McMullen. You can either have the Eagles to win the division, or you can have the Cowboys and just add the Giants and the Commodores to the mix. Commanders, call them whatever you want. Commies is what my partner on the weekend, Glenn Macnow, calls them, which is humorous.
Can't call them the R word.
Can't call them that, but you can call them the commies. Okay. I don't think either Washington or New York has a chance to win this division. I think it's a two-team race, and I think the Eagles have the lead as of right now. So do you take the lead dog, or do you just add the extra minimal value that it is to get the Giants or Washington?
I think the smart play is to take the field, but I do think the Eagles are the favorites in the division. One of the reasons why, Jody, you mentioned, obviously any team can get derailed normally by the quarterback getting hurt. The Eagles are better equipped to handle that than anybody. Maybe you can argue Washington. We talked about Taylor Heineke and his moxie, but I think Gardner Minshew is the best backup. So I do think the Eagles should be the favorite. I do think the Eagles are the favorite, but I take the field. I think it's a smarter bet.
All right, so let me ask you this question. If there is a team out there in the National Football League where you had the choice of taking that team in their division or their three rivals, if it's not the Eagles in the NFC East, what team and what division is it that you say, all right, I'll take this one team over the three other squads?
Oh, that's a good question. I got to go through this real quick. Probably.
I think I know where you're going.
It's going to be Tampa Bay or Green Bay, and they're neck and neck. And I probably go Green Bay because I don't think a lot of people think Minnesota could jump. I don't think with a rookie head coach, I don't think it's going to happen. So I would lean towards Green Bay.
See, and I thought you were going to go the other way because you are less of a fan coming into the season of the New Orleans Saints than I am. I actually think the Saints could have a winning record, which I know Eagle fans stinks because the Eagles have the Saints first-round pick. But I still think Jameis has a little game. I'm not going to elevate Dennis Allen to Coach of the Year status, but he has been Peyton's right-hand man.
Allen? Jeff Kerr, our buddy Jeff Kerr, can't stand Dennis Allen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm not as big a detractor, and I think that the continuity that they keep by keeping him as the head coach with Peyton walking away actually is advantageous. So it comes down to me. See, I think the Falcons and the Panthers are both going to be really bad.
That's where I think the Lions and the Bears are both going to be really
I was going to say the Lions and the Bears are equally bad. So it comes down to which of the two teams do you think is going to be better, Vikings and or Saints? Yeah, I think the Saints are going to be better than the Vikings. So I would take my shot with the.
But then you say the Packers.
You ended up with Packers,
yeah. I agree with that. I agree. Those are 1-2, and it might be 1-1A. I mean, I think those two teams have the easiest path to be division champions. But yeah, if I go, to me, is it Green Bay or Tampa Bay? Slight edge to Green Bay for that reason. I don't think New Orleans is great. I don't think they're terrible. I don't think the Vikings are terrible. I don't think they're great. I probably give them because the experience. And, even though Dennis Allen is a first-year head coach in New Orleans, he's not a first-time head coach. Kevin O'Connell's 36th first-time head coach. There's going to be some growing pains there.
We do like the Eagles' schedule this upcoming year. It is not tremendously difficult, but one place where they actually didn't get the benefit of the doubt in the schedule. I'd rather play the Saints week 2 and the Vikings week 17 than playing the Vikings week 2 and the Saints week 17, because I think the Saints And Jameis could get hurt, but I think they will get better over the course of the year once they've transitioned and it's become Dennis Allen's team. And, oh, by the way, Alvin Kamara probably going to be suspended start of the season. I'd rather see him out for the game against the Eagles. And if they had him week 2, that would be the case. By week 17, even though the NFL's dragging its feet on all things suspension these days, I'm assuming that Alvin Kamara will be back for the Saints by week 17.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you're playing the Saints, you don't want Alvin Kamara on the field. I mean, he's difficult to deal with. You remember Malcolm Jenkins giving Sean Payton the finger on the sidelines because he was playing with Malcolm with Alvin Kamara. He is a really, really good, really dynamic player. The Vikings have Dalvin Cook though, so it's kind of it's going to be interesting. The Vikings are going to be interesting, obviously, from the Jefferson perspective, and that's going to say a lot about Jonathan Gannon's defense early because, the Eagles have good corners. We talked about it yesterday on the show, Jody, at least the starters. What can they do with a quarterback that throws for a lot of yards and a receiver that puts up big numbers? That's going to be a good early test for this Eagles defense.
Agreed. All right, that'll put a wrap on today's show. We thank Bo Wolf for hopping on. Looking forward to tomorrow's show. We got 2 good guests. One of which we've had on before, and when he came on with us, he was very good, making his second appearance on Birds 365, and one making his first. And shame on me that I never asked him to come on with us before. Early, we'll get the voice of the Eagles and Espanol, Ricky Ricardo, who I know you talk to all the time. Ricky's always recruiting you for his WIP shows. So the voice of the Eagles in Spanish will be with us tomorrow. Ricky
Voice
Ricardo.
of the New York Yankees in Spanish as well. And sometimes in English, now that John Sterling is taking.
He does some filling for Sterling these days. So we're looking forward to talking to Ricardo tomorrow. And Mr. Takeoff Podcast himself, John Clark's going to hop aboard in hour number 2. So we got 2 good guests planned for you tomorrow. I'm here tomorrow, McMullen, COVID allowing, which I think I'm 100%.
You sound great,
I'm not
by
even
the way.
98%.
I don't even ask about the COVID anymore. You have completely turned the corner.
I am 100%.
Yeah.
Healthy. I am good to go, and I will be good to go tomorrow. You going to be here with me?
I'm going to be here.
John McMullen, Jody McDonald, back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.